Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the podcast. It has been quite a while since the last episode, I believe 4 years or so. Today, I'm joined with my co host, m2dave. How are you doing, Dave?
I'm doing very well. It's good to be back.
That's awesome to hear. Unfortunately, we did try to reach out to Crimson and Tom, but they couldn't make it because, they have some busy schedules. And on top of that, just to be clear, I don't think there's, too many interesting topics to discuss lately. Because to be fair, it's what 2 years of the new game being released for MK12 being out. So a lot of people are either have kind of already played a lot of MK12, seen what there is to do, and maybe some people have moved on or they're waiting for the next MK game around the corner. Which brings us to this Legacy Kollection, just kind of been the buzz around lately. What is your opinion on that, Dave?
Well, first, let me say it's good to be back doing a podcast with one of my best friends in the FGC. And I know we didn't necessarily end on a good term last time. So, and I do apologize, at least on my behalf for making it too personal. So it's very good to be back and discuss the game instead of engaging in personal attack, which I overdid last time. So I want to focus more on not necessarily, we're just gonna talk positives. I want to talk about, whatever's being discussed, and I was looking at your video about the first video that you uploaded on your main channel, in terms of what this game, obviously referring to multiple games, right? Because it's gonna be a Legacy Kollection, referring to rollback netcode, rank mode, training mode. I kind of want to go into specifics with each one and talk about how it's important. Even if you think these old games are irrelevant, if you think they're jank, I think this topic is still very important to discuss because you guys know from MK12, its first year, had a lot of issues, uh, in relation to the rank mode, the online mode, single player content, etc., right? So I think it's important to stress these topics and urge NRS and WB to do a good job and not just rush this and give us a poor quality product. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I appreciate the kind words. Yeah, we are kind of going to be, I guess, going for the future, trying to keep the podcast more professional. So let's say there are some disagreements, right? There's a game you happen to like that I don't like. We're going to keep less about insulting the player that enjoys the game, right? Saying the game is garbage or the game is scrubby or all 50/50s, whatever it is. And more so talk about the actual elements of the game and go on from that into something more than kind of like you said, like petty personal arguments. But regarding this Legacy Kollection that's coming out, I'd say, as you mentioned, like I did make a video a few weeks ago on 5 points I feel are extremely important with this collection coming out. And when I say they're very important, when they're releasing something, a project like this, right, they're almost in a way reviving the old Mortal Kombat games because now we're going to be able to play a bunch of them with rollback, which was not possible before. And when it comes to this, the first impressions are going to be very important. They have to get it right. That's why when I made that video, I made sure to mention things like a ranked mode, because if they release this and there's not a proper rank mode, it could have the best netcode in the world, right? The best rollback, and almost no lag. Can play people across the world in perfect condition. If there's not a good rank system, not a good matchmaking system, it's gonna kind of spoil the product, like for us being able to play and enjoy it. Because the last thing I want is for all the players that are coming back to playing these older games or players that are newer that are going to be playing them for the first time. I don't want them to experience what I had to go through when I was learning some of these 2D Mortal Kombat games back in 2006 on Xbox when they released UMK3. That port, not only did it have very bad delay built into it, but the online was not good. When we were playing online, it was a disaster. There wasn't a training mode. So for me to practice, we have to get put into real matches, not knowing anything. And it was just overall a very frustrating experience. But because, back then we weren't used to things like rollback netcode or training modes and that, you kind of had to push yourself to learn a game, even though it was very tedious. And in a way, it kind of made a lot of players leave into wanting it to grow. We had so many players back then during Xbox Live for MK3. It kind of exploded. There was so many people on the leaderboards. There were, I would say, like hundreds of thousands of people online. And it was pretty big for a few years. And I know after 2006, they released you may have also had this because you were on PS3 during that time. They released Mortal Kombat 2 on PlayStation 3, I believe a year after UMK3. I would have to double check, but I think that was released in 2007, I want to say around that. Did you end up buying that version at all?
No, I don't think I had it, but I heard at least again you're better with the years and stuff. But I remember like one of the versions that they tried to release was like on Xbox Live, but the online was so trash, right?
That was the UMK3 version. I got released 2006. But on PS3, they released the MK2 version, and that one, it's kind of interesting how they did it because Xbox had UMK3 and then PlayStation had MK2. And I remember because I saw a lot of familiar faces playing that. Remember one of our previous co-hosts, Slips, used to play the MK2 version of that with Scorpion. I remember that. 'Cause I ran
Yeah.
into him a few times in that. Like back then, these games were cool because they were releasing them and I was getting into them because during that time I was playing the 3D Mortal Kombat, you know? But I always thought I had the older 2D MK games on consoles, but I never got to play them against people, you know, in a serious matter like I did with the 3D Mortal Kombat's online. So when these were coming out, I obviously was hooked on them and I bought them. I wanted to understand and learn them. I didn't enjoy Mortal Kombat 2 as much as UMK3, not because Mortal Kombat 2 is a bad game or anything. I think the game is good. There's, you know, a lot of skill that goes into winning. It's just less of the style of gameplay that I enjoy compared to UMK3. I like more of the fast-paced, fluid game more than, you know, the slower, laid-back gameplay that you see in Mortal Kombat 2. Like you said, the netcode and those two, I know you haven't played them, but you can imagine how bad they were with how they were released in back then at that time when having a very good netcode was not really a thing yet. But they tried to do another arcade project release, and they released that I think during MK9. It was 2011, and it included MK1, MK2, and MK3 with online. And I remember playing that port, which I was kind of excited for because I was like, hey, you know, we're getting a new classic MK port. MK9's coming out, but let's check this out. I remember playing it, and that port was also pretty bad. It had very bad input delay. It had horrible lag. It had a quick match. I don't know if it was ranked, but it had a type of matchmaking with random people where you could play a first to one, and then it would switch. Because back then, NRS games didn't have a very good rank system. They just had first to ones and switch. You remember that during MK9? It had the same thing.
Yes, I do. Um, and I think it most of the people probably watching this podcast, obviously they probably played MK12 to some extent, including you, right? The first 2-3 weeks, and we know what the game's problems were. We just cannot have those problems again ever. This is not, it's not like, oh my god, I hate the camera system. This is not about the meta and its gameplay. It's just like very basic stuff that's almost entirely objective, right? When you buy a modern fighting game, what's important? Well, you probably care about the online gameplay. You want it to be smooth. You want there to be a good matchmaking system, like Rio just said. You want there to be, maybe some kind of online training mode. That's a type of stuff that essentially dug a big hole for MK12, and probably the reason why the game didn't sell as much as it could have, and the reason maybe the scene could have been bigger than what it is right now. And I by the way, I still enjoyed the game. I'm still playing it, but I think it's very, very important that when this Legacy Collection gets released, or even the next Mortal Kombat in maybe 2-3 years, that we have these features that are so important to modern fighting games that they cannot be released without them.
Yes, I agree. I did play MK12 for the first few weeks to get into it, but I had it for PC, so I don't know if console had these issues. I guess you can comment on that. Because on PC, there were a lot of problems. Like, I remember trying to play Detroit. We would play together. On PC, I was playing with Detroit, Smoke, and Super Bowl, a lot of other players. And an issue was every time we tried to play each other, the game would desync after one game, and we would have to leave and reconnect, and then we would try doing private lobbies. And when we would accept and join after the intro, it would desync, and then we were like, "Well, how are we going to play each other?" And then I forgot who it was. I think it was Soup that figured it out. You had to make a King of the Hill match, invite somebody one on one on PC, and then not skip the intro, and then play a game, and then after it would bug out and the game would crash. We'd have to keep doing that. So this was kind of ridiculous, for a AAA game to release in the state on PC. Aside from that huge hurdle, I remember when I wasn't playing with them, I was trying to play Combat League a bit just to learn some of the game. It was kind of the same issue on, in playing people online. There was issues with sometimes the game crashing or whatnot. I don't want to really get into the technicals of the game. I didn't enjoy in terms of gameplay because we're not really talking about that. But yeah, I would agree. So like first impressions are very important. If they release this collection, these games, they got to make sure it's tested properly and it works. You cannot have people inviting their friends on PC and then having the game desync and crash repeatedly for like a month or so, because that's going to turn off a lot of people.
Yeah, to say the least. And even after you had quit, there was a I don't know when this was exactly. It was probably like during winter time, at least in the US. It was maybe from I don't know, from like October to November. I don't remember exactly, but maybe autumn/winter time. There was like a month where the game was just literally like unplayable online. Like you said, it would just desync nonstop. And randomly too. You would play a match and it was fine, then another match it's just like, it just stopped. And you have to restart the game or whatever. It was very, very strange. And we can't, like you said, first impressions matter, and we just cannot have that stuff. Irrespective of the fact how you feel about this game, right? Again, this is super objective. We can all agree that the online should be playable. But I want to go into a bit more details. Like, obviously, we need to have rollback netcode, again, which you discussed. I think there should be a rank mode. So if I'm playing Ultimate, I don't want to go in and fight you because you used to play the game a lot, or run into shock, and then because you guys been playing the game for a long time. Obviously, I'm at a low level if I want to play, so I should not be running into players who are much better. So you definitely need a rank mode. I think training mode is a little bit trickier because that may include like actually like adding content for like an older game. Do you see what I'm saying? So that's a little bit trickier, but I think it should definitely have it because if it doesn't, because we can all kind of agree, even somebody like me, again, I like the newer games probably more than you do, but I think we would all agree that maybe some of the older games are a little bit more difficult to play. So if I'm trying to learn Reptile's combos, right? In Ultimate, I know it's easier on male ninjas to do that, that jab combo, but it's a little bit more difficult to do it on the females. That's something I have to practice, but I don't want to do that during a match because I don't want to get my ass kicked. So, how do you feel like adding a training mode? Maybe that's a little bit more controversial, is it not?
Well, to touch on MK12 really quickly before I go into that, one thing I was disappointed about when I was about to play MK12 is I was hoping that one thing they learned going from MK11 to MK12 is that they were going to have a training mode available while searching for an opponent. I was very surprised and shocked to not see that in, because I was assuming, because I made videos about this during MK11 saying, one thing we need is it's not fun to play Combat League in MK11 and for minutes or whatever on stream, you're just staring at the little circle spinning, saying waiting for opponent with nothing to do. It's so outdated. All of these games now give you the ability the training mode while searching. I mean, did Street Fighter 4 have that? I know Tekken 7 did. So it's not like it's something that just came out with these new games, right? It's been here for quite a few years now. So for this Legacy Collection, I don't know if they're going to do this, right? They may save that for MK13, I'm assuming. But it would be awesome if they can somehow program that into these games where if we're searching for rank, we can practice. That way, there's never a dull moment, right? You're in the game. There's always something for you to do. And to touch on UMK3, that's a game you're going to be in training mode a lot because there's so many things to practice in that game. Like you said, you mentioned Reptile. Well, not only do you have to learn how to do Reptile combos on specific characters in your B&Bs, but then you're going to have to learn all the different variants and specific changes you have to do and on the entire cast. Like the way you do it on female ninjas is different from male ninjas. Then you have to do it differently on, Shang and Cabal and so on. So it's stuff you're going to be able to want to practice because the last thing you want to do is get into a ranked match, play against someone, and the entire time you're not even trying to play them for ranked. You're just going like, how do I do my combo? How do I do this? So that is pretty essential to add. And obviously they have to have a matchmaking system, right? Like you said, you don't want to go first match you play against like Mr. I Got Base from MK3. He's been playing the game for 19 years straight, and he just steamrolls you. Because not only is he not going to have fun, but then you're going to be like, what is this? Like, I can't even do anything. I want to practice. So, will they add a training mode? Maybe. They should, though, if they want this to explode and be very well received online. And I don't think they'll add a way to match make while training mode because I feel like if the current biggest NRS title they have out right now doesn't have that, they're probably not going to have it in this, but maybe, or I should say, hopefully MK13 has that because it kind of needs it at this point.
Yeah, and I know people might be listening to this, be like, oh, I can't believe these two old people, complaining about the stuff about 25, 30-year-old plus games. It's like, guys, but remember, some stuff paves the way for the future. Do you want to have some of these features in your next Mortal Kombat game, in your next Injustice game? Then you need to speak out and, not harass the developers on Twitter, which is completely inappropriate, but in a polite manner express, okay, this is what we need because your last game didn't have this. Can we please have this? And I think it's perfectly reasonable, especially we don't know what the cost's going to be. And I'll probably tell you, probably ain't going to be cheap, right? To respectfully demand these features that a lot of these other fighting games currently have. Because I'm telling you, if the online gameplay is bad for this Legacy Collection, the game is going to be a complete disaster. It's going to be a failure. You guys are not going to have fun, even if you are, just trying to get off, like casually playing. Because if your matches keep disconnecting as they did, at some point during MK12, it's going to be a very frustrating gameplay experience.
Yeah, and regarding MK12, because I've heard people say like MK12 didn't sell well or whatever in the beginning, or it didn't have traction. The thing is, MK12 was actually doing very good in the beginning. Like the first few weeks, first few months, was beating out MKX, beating out MK11 a lot. I remember on my Steam friend list, I was like, wow, I have like 200 people on my Steam friend list, and so many of them had MK12. I'm like, wow, there's so many people on this game right now. What I noticed is after a few weeks, barely most of them were even on the game anymore. It was probably 1/10 of what was on. So it was a huge drop off, which I guess bad word went around, and then the game started losing, a lot of sales it could have had if it had a lot better launch. But going back to the 2D MKs, a funny story is one of the reasons why I picked Nightwolf as one of my mains to learn UK3 in it was because the netcode was so bad. So I was looking for like an easy to play character where I wouldn't have to practice mode. So the character I decided learning UK3 with as my first main was Nightwolf because he's the easiest top tier to use in that game. He's got a simple auto combo, does a lot of damage. Can just end in shoulder, doing a hatchet. Just simple combo for good damage. His game plan is very simple. You just mash out shoulders, which is good in lag because it's an easy input to do. And the shoulder will want to get people to duck because it's safe-ish on block. Only like a couple characters can punish it, and it's a fast move. So the way to counter his shoulder is you have to neutral duck. And because he has a good mid where he can run up to you, he can hit you. So he had a very simple game plan. That's why I went to that character to learn UP3 with, because there was no training mode, because the netcode was bad like that back then. And I think that's a bad way to learn a game. Trying to make yourself learn a game in the easiest, scrubbiest way possible because the game just it's available but doesn't have the tools to either function properly with the online or doesn't have something like a training mode. So like I said, hopefully they hit this out of the park with this new game that they're putting out, and it has things like a training mode at the very least, even though they may not have searching while training. And the matchmaking, I can't stress this enough. It's so important. You have to be able to play people, other beginners around your level, move your way up. You do not want to get random people searching, playing against random people, because then the people that are good at the game are going to get bored playing the people that they're steamrolling, and then the people that are getting steamrolled are going to two things are going to happen. They're either going to end up quitting, or they're going to end up bad mouthing the game, saying this game is dumb. And that will sort of ramming shoulders or it's scrubby, and then that's going to have bad word go around and circulate, and then that'll probably kind of dampen the massive hype that could have been around the game for the next few years when people start dropping it.
No, absolutely. And but I know we keep kind of switching a little bit of topics. I'm not this guy, who beats a dead horse and thinks MK12 is this trash game. Because by the way, I still play it. I know you don't anymore, which is fine. But I think the gameplay is one of the best that I've ever seen NRS do. It's also a very well polished game in terms of just the way the game looks like, the way the game the balance of the game, the just the character variety. I think it's very, very good, and I like a lot of the gameplay features of the game. But again, we want to make sure that the mistakes from the first year are not repeated in future games, legacy or otherwise. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not a huge Fightcade guy, but there is a practice mode for that, right? For any game that's on Fightcade, there's a practice mode, including for Ultimate MK2. Is that correct?
Yes, if you go on Fightcade, there's I believe the game has to have ranked. I could be wrong on this, but if the game has like a rank, like for Third Strike, MK3, so on, there's an option to click training, and then it puts you in the game. And when you go to versus or whatever, they have full HP, their health doesn't drain, and the time doesn't go down. So you have a way to practice combos and try to get the feel for the game. Really quickly to go on what you were saying, because you said I played MK12 but didn't end up enjoying it. I'd say I played MK12 the first few weeks, then I kind of moved on. But I feel like I didn't give the game a fair shot because obviously you should probably play a game for a few more weeks, right? I didn't get to see what the patches and changes they did after that. But the thing was, back then during MK11, when they announced that they were no longer supporting MK11, I was assuming that, well, I guess NRS is releasing the next game, right? Like they usually do every 2 years. So because they ended up not releasing it, and it was such like a long downtime. It was like 4 years since MK11 for this game, right?
Yeah.
During that downtime, while I was waiting, I ended up getting into other games like Counter-Strike, which way ended up becoming my main game because Counter-Strike 2 ended up coming out. I got into that game, and as someone who doesn't play shooting games, it was kind of awkward for me to adjust to, but I ended up really liking that game and enjoying it. And the fact that the game, it's kind of crazy when you go from playing fighting games to playing another game like that, seeing how the game is made in a way where it's like accessible for people to try, but then there's so much into it, so much depth, so much things to learn that kind of go over your head if you're just playing the game for the first time. Like there's so many little things you don't notice. And after getting into Counter-Strike 2 a lot, I played that game a lot for like a year. I was enjoying it. I loved playing Premiere and the ranked modes and all that. My PC ended up dying, so last time I played Counter-Strike was like 8 months ago because my PC, so I kind of whatever. During that time when I got back into MK12, when it got released, I was expecting a lot because I was like, wow, this is NRS's first time having 4 years to make a game now, They're not stuck in this 2-year cycle where they only have 2 years to try to develop something and push it out. Now they have more time to work on the game. So this game is probably going to be twice as good as any previous game on release. Well, I was wrong on that. And I'm not just talking about the desync issues and stuff. I'm talking about when I played the gameplay, I was shocked to see that for some reason the gameplay was slower than MK11. And MK11 wasn't even a fast game. It was on the slower side because MK11 was slower than MKX. So I was very surprised to see MK12 gameplay. What it felt like to me was slower. The movement felt a little bit slower. The block dashing felt very controlled and limited. Like they wanted you to use it to move quicker, but not too fast. They had like a control on it. And a lot of the characters' movesets, like the character I ended up maining in the beginning, my first team was Havoc and Darius. That was my team. Kind of like my 3D MK team from MK Deception, which for you guys that don't know, MK Deception is my favorite Mortal Kombat game. Not for gameplay, I just mean in general. The game that when I think Mortal Kombat, I go to Deception because to me that's the coolest Mortal Kombat game that they've ever created in terms of like I had the music was amazing, love the character designs, I love the modes in the game, everything. So for MK12, I decided to go with a throwback team to Deception, being Havoc and Darius. And when I played Havoc, he was so different from Deception. He didn't have a lot of his similar moves. He had so many different attacks. Darius felt almost like he was designed with no nod at Deception whatsoever. Like all of his attacks that he had, not a single one I remember even being in Deception. He didn't have his iconic Nutbuster, his iconic low nut punch 50-50. He didn't have his Gauntlet 3 launcher. He didn't have his backbreaker throw, all those stuff. He had like these different moves. He had like an axe kick, and you can spin him around, which I guess that's a little nod to his sax twist kick. And he didn't have his tricky shot. He just felt he was supposed to be Darius, but designed in a different way. Where I guess he wasn't supposed to be Darius. He was supposed to be like I guess a revision of the character, similar with Havoc. Havoc had these like neoplasma projectiles, which are kind of cool, but I feel like they didn't really fit the character. And then he had a roll attack instead of his. I thought his corpse dive was a lot cooler in Deception. They should have brought that back instead of having a generic roll where he comes in and grabs you. And I know if you meet a brand that gives you that he can set up his neck breaker and blockable, where he doesn't heal off. It does entirely different stuff. That I think was the most comparable thing to Deception, but the entire rest of his moveset was just completely new. It felt like they wanted to bring the characters back, but have least amount of moves compared to what they had back then. So, he had Havoc without his blue skull projectile, no corpse dive, no him splitting himself in half to heal himself. Same thing with Darius, no 50-50 nut punch attacks, no tricky shot, none of his iconic good moves in Deception. And I guess you could say maybe the people that developed this game weren't around to play Deception, or they didn't like the game, because that game was, over 20 years ago at this point?
Yeah, I'm so happy you're talking about this because you have no idea how much people have asked for you and your opinions. Because obviously you guys know, when REO was missing in action, I was doing a podcast with Tom. A couple of times I showed up on Mike Hollow's channel. And recently I've been doing some stuff with King Jr., aka Burrito Voorhees. Please check out his channel on YouTube. But always the number one question was, where's REO? Why isn't he playing? What does he think, right? What does he think about MK12? What does he think about the current FGC, and stuff like that? So I'm very, very happy you're talking about this. Obviously, you and I talk a lot privately, and which is one of the reasons I consider you one of my best friends in the FGC, if not the best. So I'm very happy you're talking about this because a lot of people have been wondering. And I think maybe you're being a little bit too nice because obviously whoever designed Darius in this game probably didn't spend a minute, playing Darius or even playing MK Deception ever in their lives. So it was very disappointing, because I just in general I like the name Darius. It's just kind of sounds cool, and I like the character. And then you kind of play him. It's like, wait, what? Like, what is this? Like, this character has nothing to do with the Darius that we, got to know. Lord knows how many years ago, in Deception. So it was a very disappointing design. And to this day, like, he's kind of like a low tier cameo anyway. That's not really used all that much. They did kind of buff him. I believe he gives you the most health now, if I'm not mistaken. But again, the fact that I played a game and I'm still not sure what the design is a little bit disappointing. He should have been one of the very, very few like 50-50 mix-up characters, right? Because he is from Deception and the game is kind of known for that. So yeah, it's a little bit disappointing, the way he turned out, to say the least.
Yeah, because I mean his whole game plan in Deception was to abuse his 50-50s and throw you. But it's not a knock at saying I don't like the 3D M cases. I love the 3D Mortal Kombat. It's just when you bring back a character from the past and you have people excited that grew up playing in the past, playing games like Deception. I mean, I played the game for 2 years straight on my line. I was on that game online every day for 2 years straight, enjoying the hell out of it. When you bring a character like that back from the past, it's almost like, well, who are these characters for? Because we need to design them so differently. I guess they're not for the people back then that like nostalgia, right? Because they're completely different. The only thing Darius shares from the Darius in Deception is his name. Everything else is completely different. But, when I was playing with Havoc, I realized I was playing Detroit, and Detroit was playing Shang and Kung Lao. I'm like, man, your cameo seems annoying. You have your hat like every 5 seconds. I'm using Darius like every 20 seconds. So I was like, maybe I should try somebody else. So I ended up going to another 3D character I enjoyed, Serena. And I was like, let me go to Serena. She's probably going to have really good zoning, because you played in Armageddon. She had one of the best projectiles that she could use. She had a skull basher attack and other moves. And I play Serena. I'm like, wow, Serena is quite different from Armageddon. She does have a good projectile, but it's more like a Jade boomerang projectile. It's not how Serena was in Armageddon at all. Because what Serena was known for is throwing these quick daggers with quick recovery. So I was assuming that she would have access to like a quick fire projectile that maybe takes like a quarter or half of one cameo bar, so you could use them up to like 4 times if you want to deplete your whole bar. Something like that would have been cool. But she doesn't. She has like a boomerang combo thing, which she throws 2 of her sickle mini blades, and then it's kind of like Jade where it comes back and you get a combo after. So that move felt more like Jade. And then she has this like Quan Chi spell where you're in the thing and it drains your meter. I'm like, what even is this? Like, I don't even remember Serena having any of this. like I said, it's not a knock on it, for them to, I guess, redesign characters. It's just